For those of you who are just joining us, again, my name is Bilal Sarwari. I'm the interim executive director for Slow Food USA. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about our movement. The slow food movement works around the globe to advance good, clean, and fair food for all. But what does that mean? We believe that all food should be good, meaning it should taste delicious and nourish our bodies. We believe in a clean, environmentally sound practices to curb climate change and heal our planet. And we believe that food should be cultivated and made by workers who are treated and paid fairly. And if you want to advance a world filled with good, clean, and fair food for all, I encourage all of you to join our movement. We are a membership-based organization. We are 3,600 members strong, and we have 500,000 activists across the country. So please join Slow Food USA today. And if you are once a member or were once a member and need to renew, feel free to renew your membership today as well. And during any point during our session, please feel free to take action for our Biodiversity Advocacy Day by clicking the link that you'll find in the chat. Okay. All right, I'm going to move on. I have I'm so excited to introduce Denisa Livingston, who will be our moderator for today's session. Denisa is an unapologetic food justice organizer and Ashoka Fellow, an Indigenous public health consultant, and multi-epistemic researcher. She is the former Slow Food International Indigenous Counselor of the Global North and former appointed member of the Champions Network of the United Nations Food System Summit. She completed her recent appointment as a 2023-2024 Tribal Data Champion Fellow at the University of New Mexico. Denise is also a graduate from the University of Oklahoma College of Law, Indigenous Peoples Law Program, and holds a Master of Public Health degree from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Her mission is to improve and empower the lives of others. And Denisa has been a legislator, speaker, and community health advocate for the Diné Community Advocacy Alliance, DCAA. DCAA have been globally recognized for the successful passage of several laws, the first of its kind addressing food apartheid, called the Elimination of Tax on Healthy Foods, with an emphasis on indigenous foods. The Healthy Diné Nation Act of 2014 for unhealthy food tax, and a tax revenue allocation for community wellness projects for all 110 Navajo chapters. She's committed to addressing food apartheid, nutritional trauma, the diabetes epidemic, the dominant culture of unhealthy foods, and the increasing need for healthy food access and restorative justice. Denisa, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Bilal. Welcome, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I am tuning in from the traditional homelands of Chief Seattle, so the Salish coast here where the tribes of the Duwamish and Suquamish and Muckleshoot tribes are. So I just give you some greetings from the ocean breeze, the coolness, the rain, all of those beautiful feelings, the wet soil, the fresh air, all of those amazing blessings. Yat'e, I'm going to introduce myself in my Diné language because our language is a blueprint for our spirituality, which is really addressing where we are today and then also for the future and then where we are coming from. So Yat'e, She'e Denisa Livingston and Nishiaka the Chitni Nashlan Tisha Dina and Bashichin, Oze Dina Tachitni Dashache, Do Nanish Eja Tachitni Dashanella. I see that Nasha A Teragon Wodia Diagut A Dianishila. I just introduce myself. I'm from the Red House People Clan from the Diné Nation, otherwise known as the Navajo Nation. I'm a tribal citizen, born for the Chiricahua Apache people, and my grandparents are of the Zuni people and also of the Hopi people. I'm from New Mexico, from the Navajo Nation side. We are in 3 states, Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. And I'm in this training all week here in this amazing, beautiful space with the Native Organizers Alliance. So I'm here with many Indigenous leaders about how collective building is accomplished, but also how we continue to protect our Mother Earth and also Father Sky. So just a beautiful blessing to you guys. If you can in the chat, if you haven't already, please put the Indigenous lands that you are on, or that you reside on, or that you're from. And let's just acknowledge the land and the past stewards and our ancestors that really held the land, took care of the land, protected the land, the ocean, the water, the air, and continue to do so to this day, because it's really important as we think about how we are bio stewards and how we are acknowledging today as Biodiversity Advocacy Day in the world. We welcome you in community. So wherever you are, if you're lost or found, if you're an advocate, a chef, a grower, if you don't know why you're here, it's okay, because we're all trying to come together to recognize the importance of what community is. So if you can put in the chat too, what is one thing that you would just like to let go of? Like, let's let it go. Because we need the healing, the joy, the resistance in our justice work. Put in the chat what you want to trade that negative thing in for a positive thing. I, just want to encourage you as we think about our heart posture. It is a really amazing space here, even though we're virtually. One day we will be in person together, and hopefully those of you that are in close community, please reach out to one another. Go have lunch, go have dinner. Don't just text one another. Let's, really get involved in building community and what that looks like, because we all love to eat, right? I mean, that's what Slow Food brings us for, and we love to have drinks. And so as we think about today in our panel, enjoy what you're doing. Just take a deep breath. Take some notes if you want, just really think about the innovative ways that you can become more of an advocate, and think about your slowness, because we just got to take it slow sometimes. It's going so fast, but we got to take it slow. So I have an amazing panelists here, and I'm going to introduce them. And and if you have any questions, we'll be taking those and answering them at the end. So I'd like to get started with Vanessa García Polanco. And Vanessa co-designs the strategy and implementation of the National Young Farmers Coalition government relations campaigns, ensuring equity-driven, farmer-centric research, policy, and interventions for more than just the food system. She's also serving as an organizational council member of the U.S. National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. She previously worked at the USDA, so the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Michigan State University for Regional Food Systems. She's an alumna of Michigan State University and the University of Rhode Island. She is a James Beard Foundation Scholar in Agriculture, Food, Human Values, Society, Innovation Leader, and a 2021 Emerging Leader in Food and Ag. And as an Afro-Dominican immigrant, she brings her experiences and identities to her policies and advocacy activities. So she leads hashtag Dominican Food Studies project and funnels financial and ag resources to Dominican Food Sovereignty Project. So welcome. You can put some hearts, please, in the reactions. And moving on to Marven to introduce him. Marven Cantave is a small-scale vegetable farmer and nonprofit leader with a passion for building sustainable food systems in the Mississippi Delta. As the executive director of the food system, Marven works to promote local agriculture, community engagement, and food justice in the region. Marven brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to his work, helping to empower farmers and promote healthy eating habits among Delta residents. His dedication to sustainable agriculture and community nutrition has earned him recognition as a rising thought leader in the local food movement, and is frequently sought out for his insights on issues related to food security and nutrition. When he's not tending to his crops or leading the charge for food justice, Marven can be found spending time with his friends and family, volunteering as a youth basketball coach, and advocating for social justice causes. So welcome, Marven. Thank you for being here. And now Marta Messa has worked with Slow Food since 2010, where she coordinated the development of ecological projects and Africa projects. Since 2014, she has been based in Brussels, liaising with EU institutions on policy related to food, giving a platform to the International Slow Food Network, and developing strategic partnerships with other organizations active at the European level. Since 2022, which we celebrated when this happened, she served as Secretary General of the Global Slow Food Movement. So welcome, Marta. Some of you are familiar with our leader. So welcome and thank you for being here, Marta. And I'd like to introduce Cristina Cabrera. She serves as the Executive Director of the Northeast Sustainable Agriculture Working Group. She has been an urban community grower for the past 10 years and is a master gardener. She has been a community organizer, water protector, social and environmental justice organizer for over 20 years in what is now known as the state of Rhode Island and Massachusetts. With mixed Indigenous and Latinx roots, she currently organizes with local Aboriginal people and Native Green to restore the balance of Mother Earth. She's also the co-founder of Global Village Farms in Massachusetts, prior co-founder of 2 architectural design and construction BIPOC businesses, and prior executive director of 2 grassroots nonprofit organizations. So everyone, I like to say, give a round of applause to our panelists. So round of applause like this, and get you guys active because we just can't just be sitting here like, do this, yeah, get that blood flowing, yay. So welcome everyone. Let's go ahead and jump to our conversation and hear from them, from their expertise, their life experience, but also their passion. And the first question I'd like to ask is, what is biodiversity and why is it so important? I know there's many answers to this, but we want to get your input on this. So Cristina, Marta, Marvin, go ahead and take it away. Cristina, you want to? Okay.
Sorry, I needed to unmute myself. Is the audio okay? Hello, everyone. Just a pleasure to be here. So biodiversity, it's the space we live in, with the 2-legged and the 4-legged animals, the air, the water, the sky, the interdependence, interconnectivity of the whole ecosystem, if you will, if you want to call. It's indispensable for each and every living being is indispensable. There's I want to say, in math you have 1 + 1 is 2. With Mother Earth, it's 1 + 1 is 1. We are all part of that whole, and we are all indispensable, and we are essential, and we need to protect each other, strengthen the relationships. The climate crisis, today scientists and many people reduce it to a carbon crisis. It is a relationship crisis. It is truly not understanding how we relate with each other, with all living beings, and not understanding that interdependence and that balance that needs to exist for, and that biodiversity in all the relationships. Without that, the ecosystem cannot survive. Without that balance and without diversity, our whole, we are, it's self-suicide, it's self-annihilation. We are destroying the habitat, our home. We're destroying the relationships, we're destroying the home that supports us. Mother Earth gives us birds and flowers and pollinators and rivers, and it's so full and so rich, and we till and we deforest and we mine and we incinerate and we pollute and all we do is destroy. So for us as an organization and as a people, we need to shift the culture and the mindset and the worldview, and that is essential to go back to the indigenous roots of supporting each other in collaboration, not in competition, having a collective mutual aid system rather than an individualistic. and capitalistic, monetizing everything, making money out of air, making money out of water. Everything is sold. Everything is for profit. This is not a system that survives because it is not in alignment with Mother Earth and Grandfather Ocean. It is not in balance. And so coming back to the Farm Bill, we need to have legislation and policy that reflects a society that is in balance with all living beings, human and non-human. And this is where we need to accept each other's diversity, the insects, the diversity of the insects, of the microorganisms, of the plants, of people. When we're talking diversity, we're talking diversity of species, but we're talking diversities of the ecosystems. We need the forest, we need the mountains, we need the water, the ocean, we need the grasslands, we need all of it. And the genetic diversity as well. You know, farmers, now it's monocrops and monoculture. And this is totally the most aggressive and key, the most dangerous piece of this climate crisis is and that we need to hone in is the lack of biodiversity. People are looking into carbon and other areas. Biodiversity is key. Understanding the relationships with each other and all the richness and the fullness of Mother Earth and Grandfather Ocean. I will stop because there's so much to talk, but I will just say one more thing, that we need to work collectively and to come to balance with all human beings and all living beings for now and for the next 7 generations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Cristina, and our elder here, Judith LeBlanc, who's one of our Indigenous matriarchs. She's like, we got to get 3 OGs, which is the past generation, our generation, and 3 new OGs, which is OG is old gangsters. So that's what you mean, 7 generations. And so humor is a part of who we are. So we got to put that in there. Thank you, Cristina. It's really important, you know, that we understand our epistemologies. How we understand our world, how we understand biodiversity, and how we bring this together. So what you're saying is really heartfelt, because we are doing the work and we're in community, and also looking forward to what that 7 generations is. So thank you for sharing, Marta.
Yes, just to very much agreeing with everything that Cristina just presented, and it's really very important. What I maybe can add, it's really like what we look at when we look at biodiversity as low food, and indeed adding to what Cristina was saying, and indeed it's this diversity that is not just the diversity of species when you look at animals or varieties, but it's the biodiversity of microorganisms in the soil, but also in the fermented cheese or in the bread that is baked, and in whatever artisanally processed foods that we produce. But it's also the diversity of cultures, of knowledge. So it's this richness really that we have in life that is, first of all, the insurance for our future, for our present and for our future. And if history, you know, can teach us something, is, for instance, what happened with the potatoes, with the potato blight in Ireland when there was a great famine in the 19th century. And that happened because basically everybody was farming a genetically identical potato that was then basically attacked by this blight, and there was no potato production anymore, and people were going hungry. And that's the basic, like, it's really the basic of biological diversity when you look at food, is to have this diversity that also really ensures you against diseases, against even climate crisis and the climate change that we're experiencing. Is this, you know, wealth of resources we can tap into to nourish ourselves and our communities and the environment at the same time. And the same thing is happening right now. Like in the last 60 years, we've been narrowing down the biological diversity in food very much, which then also translates in very narrowed down diversities of landscapes, like Cristina was mentioning, the different, you know, ecosystems that belong to biodiversity. And one example that I find it's interesting, like with the Cavendish banana, which is basically the mostly consumed banana worldwide. This is now being attacked by fungus. Everybody's going crazy about this because they're like, oh, what's going to happen with bananas? But there are more than 1,000 varieties and we're not using them. And they're also nutritionally super interesting, environmentally super interesting. So these are just two examples of how when we narrow down to one single variety, and the same happens with animals, by the way, or one single way of dealing with nature, then we're really getting in trouble. We're really getting ourselves in trouble. One thing that Cristina said that I think it's really important to highlight is that biodiversity, for us, it's really about also the relationship with one another. And it's about the relationship with nature, because when we talk about the diversity of knowledge and culture, and we see this a lot with our food producers, there's really a deep connection with the work they do. So just to give you another story, another anecdote, but there was this old lady keeping up this production of a traditional cheese in Italy. And really, she was like, the temperature is so much, the humidity is so much, I'm going to crack the window a bit open. But today the weather is different. I'm going to close it a bit more. Like there's this sensitivity to the surrounding environment that you just have from this connection to nature and to your local ecosystem. And then it's a connection to people too. And this is super important. And in this sense, biodiversity is also food justice. Because what we've been seeing in the last 60 years with this narrowing down of varieties and monocultures, as Cristina was mentioning, is that we've also seen the concentration of power and control of the food system in the hands of a few multinationals. If we look at seeds, that's exactly where you see basically 2-3 multinationals controlling about 80% of the seeds in the world. And these are the same multinationals that at the same time are selling you the fertilizers and the pesticides, so it's a whole package. And basically, that's exactly the opposite of what we want to see. Biodiversity is about communities owning the food system, communities deciding what it is that they grow, how they grow it, and what they want to consume. So it's really about this democratization of dispersion of power. It's this democratization of the food system. In this sense, and the last 2 points, biodiversity is also local economy. So we talked about how biodiversity is about the diversity of ecosystems, but biodiversity is also crucial to develop local landscapes and local economies as well. And if you take the example of food, it's really about, providing something that is unique to your region. Nowhere else you can find that product. Nowhere else you can find that taste. And that totally flips over what we're seeing nowadays of the competition, of the race to the bottom for the highest quantity for the lowest price. Here, it's not that. It's the healthy, if you want, competition of quality against quality, which is then just enriching everyone in an equitable way. And finally, biodiversity is just amazing, honestly. Like it's the richness also of the flavors and the tastes, and how boring is it to be always narrowing down our taste range to a few flavors when there's so much richness out there that then is what connects us through conviviality, through meeting, through relationships with the environment around us and to the people around us.
Thank you, Marta, and thank you for reminding us how biodiversity is very bougie, right? Like, can I just get some snaps? Like, we are the original gangsters. Like, we learn about how old and how ancient the wisdom and knowledge and traditions are, and we put that into practice, and people think this is a new practice, but the ancestral practices that you've mentioned, the taste education, and also the innovation that exists with our creativity, with our generation, and also with the upcoming generation, so important that we teach them what biodiversity is, because it is a big word. I mean, we have it as one of the 3 pillars for slow food: biodiversity, education, and advocacy. And so it is really important as we put a lot of emphasis on that. Over to Marven. We like your input on biodiversity and why it's so important.
Okay. Hey, everyone. Biodiversity, why is it so important to me? I'm a small-scale specialty crop farmer down here in rural Mississippi. I'm relatively new, right? So I'm on my 3rd year of farming. And biodiversity, like the first thing that comes to mind is bees, right? First thing that comes to mind is bees and greenhouses. And when I think of biodiversity, I think about the lack of bees. Like when we farm and when we plan our farm for next year's plantings, we're always thinking about bees and the economic impact of that. Oh, we got to get bees from here. When we're assessing land to lease from other people, one of the questions that we ask about is there a close source of water that's potable? And then the second thing right behind that is, are there bees around here? Right. I grew up in the city in Northeast Massachusetts, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and coming down here to the South, right? Before I came down here, I would always sign up for newsletters that talked about, oh, we got to save the bees, we got to save the bees. And I always thought in my heart it was the right thing to do. But coming down here and actually farming and understanding the value of bees and the kind of product that you can produce when you have an abundance of bees and other pollinators around is something that's at the top of our mind, right? Like it went from just a click on a screen to feel good about myself to really, planning financially for that. So when I think of biodiversity, the first thing that comes to mind is bees. Secondly, like Marta and Cristina had mentioned, economics, right? Making economics more local and allowing communities to actually make a dollar, generate the dollar, and keep it circulating within a community. That really matters. I'm down here in Lexington, Mississippi, Holmes County. It's one of the poorest counties in the country per capita income. And there are a lot of people in my position here in the sense of there's a lot of small scale disadvantaged farmers who focus on specialty crops. And one of the things we have trouble with is market access, right? So because there isn't that diversity of outlets to allow us to go and do what we need to do. And there's a lot of monoculture and agriculture here. There's a lot of row crop related to cotton, soy, corn, and a lot of us specialty crop farmers suffer from that because they spray pesticides and that drift gets onto our crops and we have to suffer because of that. And that hurts us a lot, right? So when I think of biodiversity, I think about economics too, because if these specialty crop farmers that are small scale can have access to diverse market outlets and lower barriers to entry, economics around here could shift pretty quickly because there are a lot of specialty crop farmers. So those are the two things I mostly think about when I think about biodiversity. I think about how it could impact the economics, and then I think about bees. I think about bees a lot, honestly. I think about bees a lot. Water, too. Last year, Mississippi was in a drought, and Mississippi was designated a drought area, at least our part of Mississippi, and a lot of small-scale farmers that don't have irrigation systems set up like those monocrop farmers do. We don't have underground wells and that bring water to us. We have to rely on the rain, or it takes 2 or 3 years just to get some simple drip irrigation systems going. And those systems gotta be replenished each year, especially those lines. So we think about water too, and how we can't just get a water pump and pump it from the local creek because that water isn't potable, right? So those are the three main things I think about. And bringing it back to the Farm Bill, programs like EQIP and targeted funding to conservation efforts and efforts related to organic certification and technical assistance in that end, those help a lot. I've benefited from those. Other specialty crop farmers have benefited those, and we need to keep those kind of efforts going.
Thank you for that. And also just bringing the reality of what we're facing, global climate crises, but also resilience. The drought is very real in my area too. And the Navajo Nation, it's the first time in 1,200 years that we could see the drought from the NASA photos from space. And our tribe was denied by the US Supreme Court water rights last year. So we are in water litigation and saying, we have been the first stewards of this land, but yet we don't have access to water. And that is a real issue around the world as we think about the bees, like you said, as we think about water, and also how do we think about the solutions that we're creating with community, the economic values, but also the implications of that, but also community currencies. We're sharing without paying one another. We're sharing our skills, our knowledge, our time, our talent, our wisdom with one another. And that's community currencies as well, that has been based in ancestral knowledge and ancestral practices. So it's really important. You know, what you're voicing today is just hopefully empowering someone. I'd like to see some reactions, put some hearts up there. And as we think about, you know, rooting our appreciation for and working to advance biodiversity in Indigenous practices and approaches, what does that sound, or what does that look like, feel like, taste like? Let's go in the same order with Cristina, Marta, and Marven.
So in our urban the land where we grow food in the urban area, we have been very intentional in bringing back the native plants of this geographic area. This is where all the birds and the animals and the insects, this is where they find their shelter, their food, their habitat, where they can sustain themselves. If you bring plants that are not natives, does not provide the shelter and the habitat they need to survive. We're also part of the pollinator pathway. The Northeast Corridor is building a pollinator pathway so that all the pollinators migrating and traveling can have the sustenance and the shelter that they need with the native plants. That I understand that the West Coast, Washington and Oregon, they're working on that, doing same thing. The importance of honoring the land. One of the things that we talk about, because it's important to be in right relationship with the land. When we grow, when we plant, when we weed, when we harvest, it's important that we come with a healthy spirit, that we, if we're angry, if we're upset, this is bringing all that energy into the food that we grow. And so it is a sacred relationship that we need to protect with Mother Earth, and we need to come to the circle for and with healing. It doesn't mean that we need to be perfect and that sometimes we cannot be upset, but we are very careful how we enter the space when we're growing food. It's the relationship and what we bring from the seed to the sprout to the table. It's all one, and that environment needs to be taken care of. It needs to be nurtured. It needs to be protected. So those are some things that we bring from ancestral knowledge and ancestral practices. I'll just leave it at that because I want to give space for others as well.
Yeah, thank you, Cristina, for that. And it's really important as we come into alignment with our values and teaching our youth, teaching our community on how to do that, because a lot of things are based in the prayers. It's based in how we conduct our character, and also in ceremony and songs. There's much more than just having that black gold, that healthy soil. There's more participation from all aspects of our environment, and divine beings, and also prophecies, and also the knowledge that we carry forward. It's really important that you have mentioned that it's very sacred. So thank you. Marta?
Yeah, so the way that we are doing it globally, and then indeed, as Denisa also involved, Slow Food as an Indigenous peoples network that takes a specific look at the whole issue of biodiversity and how to, defend and promote the Indigenous ways of promoting biodiversity. But overall, the way that we do that is really to bring together all the actors in the food system. So it's about, again, gaining an appreciation of the role that each and every one of us plays. And when I say all the actors, I really mean everyone. So starting from the farmer, the fisher, the fishing communities, the beekeepers, going back to what Marven said, and I agree with the comment that I think about the bees all the time should be a Slow Food slogan. But it's about bringing together the cooks, cooks are fantastic ambassadors of biodiversity. They're the ones who can really explain to their clients, this is amazing. This comes from farm so and so, and this is like the value of it. So they can really become their like splendid allies. But then it's also about bringing on board schools, and in that case, teachers and grandparents and aunts and uncles and whoever is, surrounding kids and is interested in the education of kids. And it's about bringing on activists, those who are ready like to take more action. And it's about bringing on board also decision makers. So I go back to what you were saying, Denisa, like indeed in our slow food strategy, we talk about promoting biodiversity, mobilizing citizens, inspiring and mobilizing citizens, and doing advocacy to influence public and private policies. And in these, like indeed the knowledge, the very unique knowledge that farmers and producers and especially indigenous peoples have, and indigenous peoples, it must be highlighted, they preserve basically more than 80% of worldwide biodiversity. So they are the ones who are really holding in their hands, in their precious hands, the global biodiversity on which we rely. And so it's really important to root all our actions in these deep knowledge that there is of biodiversity.
Thank you, Marta, for that. And it's reaching out to your neighbors, reaching out to your local tribes. It's reaching out, making friends, building relationships, being a good relative, being a good ancestor, all of those things. It's really important because that's how we're going to learn together and grow the movement, but also grow our passion for what we are doing and what we need to do so that there will be future generations, there will be future healthy generations. And so it's really important as we think about this day, but also the days coming and the days forward. Over to you, Marven.
Excuse me, can you repeat the question one more time, please?
Yeah, so how do you advance biodiversity in indigenous practices or approaches? Maybe you have some examples that you've learned from even your grandma, your mother, or your friends, relatives, however you may share.
Definitely. I'm a product of the lessons learned and the experiences of the people here in the Delta. As I mentioned, I started farming 3 years ago. And about 5 years ago, I moved down here to Mississippi. And I moved from a urban area, right? And I went to school for nutrition and public health. And I could tell you about all the vitamins, all the metabolic pathways, and why those vitamins are important. But I couldn't tell you how to grow food, right? And I remember just coming down here and seeing these fields of food being grown and tasting farm-raised chicken for the farm-raised eggs for the first time, and learning from the elders here. As you know, a lot of farmers are older in age on average, and there's not too many new beginning farmers entering, right? And it's not because that these older farmers are not willing to share their knowledge. Like I said, I'm a byproduct of a lot of people in these communities sharing their knowledge, right? They've seen in me the ability to want to work and actually put in the effort to get things done and the integrity to keep my word. And with that, they've given me a lot of knowledge. Mullein is something that grows around here wild, right? And mullein's good for medicinal purposes and things of that nature. And people would tell me, oh, there's some mullein down there. I need you to go get some for me, right? And then that's how I would learn about mullein, right? I never heard about it before, but they tell me, go get this for them, put it in some pots for me because they see that I have a decent green thumb. And that's how I learn about it. Okra and saving seeds, right? People are always bringing that up, not just with okra, but watermelon and different types of crops, how to save seeds, how to different pesticide insect traps that you could use instead of chemicals to actually, reduce pest pressure on your crops. So I think that to advance biodiversity, I've been taking in a lot of the knowledge and I've been putting it into action through some of the work that we're doing. And now we're starting a youth development program. And honestly, today's the day I'm going to give the girl her acceptance letter after this, but we're starting that. And one of the things is to get more kids interested in agriculture, right? So we do that. We do edible gardens at these schools around here. And a lot of kids are interested in agriculture, but a lot of them don't have the opportunity to explore it because they think agriculture means a big John Deere tractor, and it means a big John Deere tractor, and it doesn't necessarily mean that. And from the knowledge that I gained from folks around here, we're paying that forward to these kids. And I guess that's how I advance biodiversity in my own way.
Yeah, thank you, Marvin, for that. And I have a really small, funny story. One of our young Diné brothers went to one of our older sisters' home, and she was serving some local eggs. And he's just real young, and he's looking at the eggs. She's like, "Why aren't you eating these eggs?" And it's like, and it's, "What's wrong with the eggs?" And he's like, "Ew, these eggs are old. They're all brown." He's never had seen some brown eggs, some organic eggs, some fresh eggs. And we always tease him to this day, but it's like, it's teaching the youth, it's teaching one another what real food is and what it feels like, what it tastes like, and how we share that together. So it's really important, that we think about that. Over to you, Marvin, about talking about the impact of the legislation like the Farm Bill, what the impact is on farmers and food producers, what programs really power your farm up and farmers in your region. So back to you, Marvin.
Definitely. I think over the past few farm bills, a lot of small scale, there's a lot of small scale specialty crop farmers in our area, in addition to the larger producers, but focusing on those small scale ones, we've benefited a lot from access to credit in terms of like the microloan programs that have been out there as it relates to conservation. I mentioned EQIP earlier. I just finished putting up a high tunnel a couple of months ago, and that high tunnel came from EQIP, right? Not directly from them, but that wouldn't have happened if those provisions within EQIP weren't there, right? And I've also benefited from new beginning farmers and rancher technical assistance programs that is out of Alcorn State as it relates to the research and extension portion of the Farm Bill. So, there's a lot of different ways, again, through access to credit, conservation measures, and then also the research and extension support. I've benefited in a lot of ways from Farm Bill measures, and I hope that continues and doesn't go away. I think a lot of people have. There's farmers out here now who started in 2018, and they're farming 20-something acres. They got their tractors. They're putting down their drip irrigation. They're practicing conservation methods, and it's because they're taking advantage of these programs, and that information is being equally distributed around here. And then lastly, just to mention, a lot of the heads at the FSA, USDA offices here in Mississippi are more representative of the ethnic population here. So, and that matters a lot too. And people are more willing to go into USDA offices or FSA offices and not fear discrimination and things of that sort.
Thank you, Marvin, for that and setting that example, because your story is empowering us, it's empowering others. So keep doing that great work that you're doing and using resources like that. Over to Vanessa.
Thank you, Denisa. And it's music to my ears to hear about all the great Farm Bill programs that Marvin is taking advantage of it. Challenges that we have with the next generation of young farmers and BIPOC farmers is a lot of them don't trust USDA or use federal Farm Bill programs. And that's okay. That's a gap that we're still trying to fill, because for so long, the Farm Bill programs have focused on basically what you were saying, really wide commodity-driven, John Deere. And this next generation of farmers are not growing one crop, they're growing 30, 40 different crops in a small 10, 20 acre farms all across the country. And as you said, Marvin, really focus in biodiversity and conservation practices, looking for the bees in the farms and thinking so much about soil health and other great natural resource outcomes. So it's music to my ears to hear that you say that. And also that gives me a lot of the testimony on how long it takes to change the Farm Bill process. We have only had a Farm Bill for 90 years. This is not something that has been around since America or even before that, whatever the concept of America is. The Farm Bill is still fairly new concept, only around 90 years. But especially in the last 30 years, we have seen more investments towards young beginning and BIPOC farmers, and especially in the last 15 years. For example, one of the loans that Marvin was able to access was the #1 priority and our #1 win in the last Farm Bill. So that can give you an example how even in short 6 years, we were able to make an entire change to a program that now is impacting young farmers like Marvin. And this is why it's really important that we seize the moment right now. Tomorrow, we're going to have a Farm Bill markup. It is going to consider this proposal. And we're encouraging a lot of folks actually to vote no on the Farm Bill. Because this Farm Bill is the first draft. And basically what Cristina said, we need a farm balance with the ecosystem and by Farm Bill proposal is not that. And I know it may sound scary. Also the biggest piece of legislation that funds our food, farm, and agricultural and nutrition programs, but it's okay. It is normal. And this is the part of the movement and the moment that we need to, that is better to preserve the status quo, that to send us back in progress, in all the progress that we have made to advance biodiversity, to advance land access and capital access, and advance overall the values that we hold so dear, that advances towards food sovereignty and a stronger, more resilient, biodiverse food system. So that's the moment of where we are right now. But at the same time, every Farm Bill is a little different. It's a little funky, especially when we're thinking about specialty crops. This Farm Bill actually did really good stuff for specialty crops. But that doesn't mean that because they give us a gold nugget or a sweetener, as we call it in DC, it doesn't mean that we should settle for increases on things that we do not like. They're actually going to perpetuate monocultures. They're going to exacerbate more inequality. So we are basically asking Congress right now, it's like, keep the good things and go back to the drawing room and do another draft. And again, as I told you, it sounds scary, but this is really normal for a Farm Bill. And unfortunately, it's like the best technique that we have to really force them to reflect, like, we will not stand this. This is a no-go. So please go back and do better, because, we deserve a better food system. A food system that actually works for us as eaters, as farmers, and obviously as just individuals and beings, and obviously to the natural world.
Vanessa, you want to say more about the current state for those that may not be familiar? What's happening today about the Farm Bill?
Yeah, definitely. So not too much today. Today we're sitting ducks, at least I get crazy times. But I was actually telling my fellow panelists when they scheduled this panel, I was like, you guys are crazy. The day before markup, we're gonna be super busy. But because the message is so strong, that Democrats especially, they're not gonna vote on this Farm Bill. We are not doing amendments. So that just shows you how strong our position is right now. This Farm Bill is so ludicrous, and the audacity that is pushing the food system towards a completely different direction, that we are not even entertaining changing. We just want to shut it down and ask folks to go back to the drawing room and reconsider it. So tomorrow the committee is going to meet at 11 a.m. if you want to turn on the C-SPAN like all of us nerds. And this is what we're asking is for all of you to email your representatives even after 11 a.m. tomorrow, just continue emailing them or calling them, asking them to vote no on the Farm Bill. Basically, we really want to drum the message that this bill does not work for us. This bill does not advance our priorities and values in the food system. So basically, if it doesn't leave committee, or even if it were to leave committee, it doesn't move to the floor. So either through an amendment or through going back to the drafting process, we can rewrite some parts of this Farm Bill proposal that actually concentrate power in the ecosystem, especially towards commodity growers and monocultures, and that actually do not create a farm safety net that serves farmers. And the most important thing, takes away from our conservation programs that we really need right now as farmers are experiencing more weather events and catastrophic events. They are in the front lines of climate action, so we need to make sure we equip them with more conservation resources, like the ones Marvin mentioned, like EQIP, high tunnels, and other conservation service programs. So this is where we are, and it's a really exciting time because we're 24 hours out. So, but that's just a moment on time. That's actually only the first step. And there's 10 more steps left for until we actually have a Farm Bill. So we really want to draw the point that, oh, we're so excited you're taking the first step, but it should be the first step. Please go back and do it again because we didn't like how you took the first step. So again, we're really focused on protecting the status quo because we would rather stay here than go backwards.
Thank you, Vanessa, for sharing that. It's really important as we engage our advocacy, and Brian and Bilal are sharing links on how we do that together. What Vanessa is sharing is so very critical in the making and the construction of this, because when we look back and say, hey, I was a part of that. And one of our elders here said, we may never see the end of our work, we'll only see the beginning. And so what we're doing right now is so critical, and what you do, how you take action is so important. Thank you, Vanessa, for sharing that. Marta, what's happening in the global slow food movement to advocate for biological diversity around the world?
There's a lot happening. And the one beautiful thing about it is that we, as a truly global network, we see activities happening all around the globe. And I just, again, give you some examples just to give you a flavor of the diversity. And I'll give you an example that relates to advocacy activities, for instance, relating to GMOs. And I was just checking in preparation for this event, like what's the latest that we knew about our activities across the globe. And just to give an example, in Australia, Uruguay, Korea, Uganda, the local network has been super active to try to block GMOs and what we call new GMOs. And I'm taking the example of GMOs because they're the exact opposite of biodiversity, of the biodiversity we were talking about before. And when I say new GMOs, I mean what are usually called new genomic techniques, but ultimately we're saying they're basically like same old story. So they're like the new GMOs. And in Korea, for instance, like Slow Food South Korea bonded forces with another national association. They did advocacy work, they did pressure, and they basically managed to stop the passing of a bill on new GMOs, and have been asking to remove all new GMOs and GMOs basically from the system in South Korea. In Uruguay, they couldn't do that, but at least they got GMOs to be labeled, which is a win. For a start, because at least as a consumer, when you go and do your groceries, at least you know, and you can choose. It's not perfect, but at least you can choose. In Australia, they also worked really hard. Unfortunately, there it didn't work. Like the bill still went through in terms of GMOs, but at the same time, the actions helped raise awareness among consumers, producers, activists, and that in itself is already a result, because it means there are more people who are like, oh, there's something going on. We need to be aware of this. We need to do something about that. In Uganda, the local network as well has been like successful in stopping some bills and in introducing concepts of agroecology in the local and national policies. So Slow Food Uganda is sitting at the table with the government and with other associations, really pushing for agroecological measures in Uganda. And when we say agroecology, and I know it's a bit of a mouthful to say, but it's actually not much different from what Slow Food has been doing the last 30 years. And agroecology is really a set of principles that goes from what you do in the field with recycling, with using well nutrients, all the way to the governance of the food system. So, and it's really about the connections between all of us. And so that's why we're talking more and more about the concept of agroecology, which is not new. It's Nieleni, which is the peasants movement that came up with the first definition. And by now there are different, there's lots of research happening on it and lots of evidence showing that that's the way forward. So anyways, at the local grassroots network, there are lots of efforts happening besides all the other efforts to keep biodiversity thriving and alive, and to make sure that we can keep eating biodiversity, to make sure that indeed we need to eat biodiversity, food biodiversity to keep it alive. And so in this sense, there is all the work with the school gardens, the farmers markets, what we call presidia, which are really initiatives to bring together farmers who are keeping alive specific products that otherwise would disappear because the industrial competition is just pushing them out. But then besides these local efforts, there is also efforts at national level. I'm super happy to hear about what's happening and the efforts that are happening in the US on the Farm Bill. To give another example, in Italy, Slow Food Italy managed with a coalition of other organizations to get biodiversity in the constitution of the country, which was big because it means elevating the role of biodiversity in our society. At regional level, for instance, in the EU, we're working really hard with partner organizations, and we've managed to stop some things related to GMOs. We're still in a struggle about new GMOs. They're really trying to push them through, and it's terrible. But we've had also quite a few wins. And at global level, I bring again the example of the Slow Food Indigenous Peoples Network. And again, this taps into the question you asked earlier, Denisa, how can we root our work also in the experience and in the knowledge of Indigenous people and practices. And there we've had leaders of our movement go and speak directly with representatives of the FAO, so the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, to basically see together how can we promote Indigenous ways to develop sustainable food systems. So this is just to give you an idea of the range of activities that are happening from the really grassroots level all the way to the UN levels, if you want, but that basically are seeping in and pushing hard for biodiversity to really be at the forefront of the solution for sustainable food systems for all.
Thank you, Marta, for that. It's a quick global update and really a mouthful. She has so much knowledge, wisdom, and knows the foresight of what's happening. Connect with Marta. But we want to hear some last words. Maybe Cristina, is there anything you would like to share that you really want to emphasize, or give us some thoughts of what's running in your area that can inspire, but also just remind us of who we are as bio stewards of this planet. So over to you, Cristina.
Take action. I already filled out the Young Farmers Coalition. Go to the link to say no to the House bill. Go to the link that has been posted. Make sure you reach out to your representatives. Share the link, and working this is why it's so important to work in community with these in all these areas intergenerationally when we come together in learning circles. We have from 2-year-olds to 70-year-olds, and that's literally how we all learn together. It's intergenerational, stressing some of the things that have been mentioned, but the importance of learning the ancestral practices with no chemicals, and ways where plants help support each other in their growth, the 3 sisters, all the ways that improve the soil health, and how all this can be translated into actual legislation for the Farm Bill. But first, the bill needs to reflect the change of culture and the change in worldview, and that is so important. That even if we don't know much about legislation, or we don't know much about policy, we know about relationships, and we know we can work to make them healthier, more inclusive, more diverse, more caring, more collaborative, and more collective. And this is something that we can all do in our world, in our circles.
Thank you, Cristina, for that. We are medicine to one another. And we have to continue to be medicine to one another and to uplift the words that Cristina has shared with us, but also every one of us that is, here as a panelist, but also those in your community, at the local level, even at the kitchen table, at the tribal level, the state level, international level. And it's really important, that we share, these values, because we're in a disrupted world, and the way things are looking, the way things are happening, we're bringing the joy and the justice work, here, and we got to keep smiling. We don't look like what we've been through. Definitely, the Farm Bill is hard work. What our ancestors went through, they went through some hard work. And so as I continue to hold this conversation, I just like to thank our panelists. We'll continue with them as we introduce Representative Chellie, Pingree. Welcome to our conversation today. Thank you so much for being with us. We just are really delighted that you made time out of your busy schedule, your busy day to be with us. I'd like to introduce Representative Chellie Pingree. She has served in the Congress representing the people of Maine's 1st Congressional District. She currently sits on the House Appropriations Committee, chairing the Subcommittee on Interior and the Environment, and sitting on the Subcommittee on Agriculture. She also sits on the House Agriculture Committees responsible for the Farm Bill reauthorization. Among other issues important to Mainers, Chellie has been an advocate in Congress for reforming federal policy to better support the diverse range of American agriculture, including sustainable, organic, and local focused farming, as well as to reduce food waste. Many provisions from comprehensive legislation she introduced to make these reformed that were passed in both the 2014 and 2018 Farm Bills. We welcome Representative Pingree. Thank you so much. My name is Denisa Livingston. I'm Diné from the Navajo Nation, and we haven't met in person. We're meeting here online, so I'd just like to acknowledge that and just thank you for joining us. So as we think about the conversation, I just like to ask Representative Pingree, biodiversity is really interwoven with climate justice. Today is International Day for Biodiversity. How does a marker bill like the Agricultural Resilience Act aim to advance biodiversity, and what's the status of the bill? And share with us today. Thank you.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for including me. I'm sorry I just ran back from voting on the floor, so I didn't get to hear all the other panelists, but I have no doubt that there have been some really interesting conversations. And probably, I don't even have that much I can add. Probably you guys have said it all, but happy to give a little bit of the perspective as we are in the week in the House of Representatives where we are marking up the Farm Bill. So this is the 2023 Farm Bill. I'm pretty sure it's 2024. So it's already taken us a while to get here, and we're certainly not there. The current draft of the Farm Bill isn't something that I could agree with because a lot of important components are missing. So you asked me about the Agricultural Resilience Act. That's something I've been working on for a very long time and continued to evolve. But really, it's been to look at the pieces of the kinds of support we can give farmers in our agriculture system to make them even better partners in biodiversity, carbon sequestration in the soil, all of the things that I think everybody here cares so deeply about. I just want to say I come to this not only from the privilege of being in Congress and serving on the Agriculture Committee for many, many years, but I've also been an organic farmer myself since the 1970s. So I go back a long way in this, when organic farming was kind of a hippie Birkenstock thing and nobody took it very seriously. Now, as we know, it's a really important part of our food supply chain. And, you know, people look for organic food in so many places and trust it. And organic farming is really the original regenerative agriculture, climate smart agriculture, because the focus of organic farming is really on healthy soil. And we know now the important role that healthy soil plays in sequestering carbon out of the atmosphere, but also in biodiversity, that in a really healthy soil with a lot of organic matter, there's an incredible kingdom living under the soil, and that biodiversity is so important, not only to the health of plants, but to sequestering carbon, but also to our own health. We have recently supported a study at the USDA just to look at the nutritional improvement of food when grown in healthy soil. So that's kind of a sidetrack, but that's one of the many things that I'm concerned about. In the Agricultural Resilience Act, which we worked on, we have components to look at healthy soils and all the kinds of ways we can support that. We have things in that bill that look at how we retain more farmland, because every time we lose some farmland, we know that's just one less piece of land that a young farmer, a beginning farmer, or a sustaining farmer can have, but also it's very likely land that's no longer in agricultural production. It might be roads, it might be development, it might be all those things that are putting even more carbon into the atmosphere. So that's a really important component, what we do in the bill. We also look at things like more research into the kind of cultivars and practices that we need going into the future. We look into investments in things like food waste. I don't know if you've talked about that a little bit today, but we waste 30% of the food in this country. Obviously, some of that is food that's, not getting into the hands of the very people who need it, but it also is a waste of the water that was used to grow that food. It's a transportation of food around the country, and then most of it ends up in landfills, so it's more methane gas. So all of these things contributing to the damage in our environment and the challenges that we're dealing with today. So we just tried to put everything in that bill, and I don't want to talk about it for too long, but and many of those components have made it into farm bills in 2018, or we're still working on trying to get into the farm bill this year. Much of the language that we produced is in the Senate version of the farm bill, but as many of you know, the House version isn't really that good. And that's what many of us are focusing on right now is basically what's missing in the House bill. And in the interest of time, I'll just talk about the three big concerns that we have about the Farm Bill that we'll be taking up tomorrow. One of those is on the nutrition program. There's a very serious cut to nutrition. And as so many of you know, SNAP benefits today are already, very minimal, make it difficult for people to procure healthy fruits and vegetables. There's a lot of challenges under SNAP today, which is about $6 a day to buy enough food for a person. Doesn't get you very far. But this would be cuts going into the future. And that's just unacceptable in the richest country in the world to be talking about making even more people hungry. But the other two components that are really disturbing in this Farm Bill have a lot to do with biodiversity and climate change. One is taking away the guardrails, as we call them, the climate guardrails from the conservation money that we're putting into the Farm Bill. So in the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, we added almost $20 billion of new money to go into conservation programs. That's everything from, supporting farmers who do no-till agriculture, plant cover crops, just a huge variety of things that are supportive to farmers that create more biodiversity, are good for the land. But we picked out the practices that we think are most beneficial to biodiversity and climate change. And those are our priorities. That's how that money is meant to be used. But in the writing of the bill, that's taken away. So we think that would be a huge mistake. We've increased that money because we're very concerned about enhancing these practices, and we're not willing to give that up as we increase the amount of money. And the other one is even more complicated. It's a program called CCC, and I can't even off the top of my head remember what that stands for. But it's a fund at the Department of Agriculture that gets used for all kinds of things, from trade assistance when we have farmers were problems when with farmers dealing with trade issues. It also goes to things like avian flu research. It goes to a whole variety of things, supply chain problems that we've had after the pandemic. This secretary has used it for a lot of beneficial things, but one thing he's really focused on is $3 billion that has gone to climate smart agriculture practices. And those are programs that are operating now in states all over the country, supporting farmers who are testing techniques, supporting people in forestry techniques, just a whole variety of really good things that we want to continue to support. Commodity Credit Corporation, that's what it's called. So anyway, those will be some big items of contention tomorrow. There will be many more, and you can get me talking all day about that, but I want to just join in the conversation and happy to answer any questions or just hear from any of you who are answering questions. There's a lot going on. If you want one simple takeaway from where we are in Congress right now, it's, tell your member of Congress that the Senate has a great version of the bill that they've written under Debbie Stabenow, and the House version isn't so good. And we need to have a bipartisan coming together on those and create a good farm bill that we can all support, but we're not there yet.
Thank you, Representative Pingree. I think, focusing on the reducing food waste, increasing research, improving soil health. I mean, there's so many aspects of the improvements that need to be done, and what you're working on is really critical on the future of farmers, but also growing more farmers and getting more youth involved and making and building community around this. And your efforts don't go unnoticed. That's why we have you on the call today, and many of our slow food change makers and community advocates are here on the call, listening to what you have to say and listening to what you have to share, but also the links that are being shared in the chat are very important that you can click on. I want to ask Marvin and Vanessa if you want to share anything and add on how this act can advance biodiversity. Marvin, and then to Vanessa.
I think, hey, Representative Pingree.
Hi.
I think, one, thank you for all the work that you and other members of Congress have done on past farm bills. And I want to say that I'm a byproduct of a lot of the work that you guys have done over the past 2 decades. I'm a new beginning farmer, about 3 years in, and I've used a lot of resources related to extension and research, the technical assistance that's being provided down here in Mississippi by Alcorn State University. I've benefited from conservation programs and targeted money from EQIP program. And I've had an opportunity to expose kids younger than I expose young students here in Holmes County, Mississippi to edible gardens because of funding from USDA and farm to school initiatives related to that. So I've learned because of the funding and the provisions that you all have brought about over the past few decades. I've started to pay it forward too with some of the funding that's available now. So I just want to thank you for that. And I ask that, you know, when you guys are advocating, continue to advocate for more targeted funding to small disadvantaged farmers and Native Americans, and more climate related things that target local food systems, you know, bring local down from 400 miles to even smaller, right? To help bolster some of these economies down here. And because of all of those things that have benefited, we're promoting biodiversity because of all of those things. So I hope that gets at it, Denisa.
You're
That's
doing
great.
good. All you're thinking about is bees, remember?
Yeah, get some funding in there for some more pollinators, right? I could use a few more bees in the field. Those things are expensive, man.
Yeah, exactly. We do need to support our pollinators and prohibit those things that are taking away the opportunities for pollinators to thrive. So it's a very important issue. You're absolutely right. And thank you for mentioning that. I'm really thrilled to hear you've been taking advantage of the programs, and we just need so many more young farmers. So, you know, what a great example you are. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Martin. Over to Vanessa.
Yeah, and I just want to tell you, Marvin, that Representative Pingree is really in all our bills related to young beginning farmers. She has been a steadfast champion related to land, market access, and conservation programs. So young farmers' priorities on this farm bill and obviously your past work. But I really want to just repeat what both of you said, that when we were saying earlier that a lot of young farmers and BIPOC farmers do not trust USDA, especially on the lending side. But every time we survey our young farmers, they say they're willing to work with the conservation resource management and cooperative extension because they do trust the technical assistance part and the conservation resources that are available to them. So every time we survey they say those are the programs we're willing to use and interact with, because again, the next generation of farmers do care about climate action and conservation programs, and obviously using agriculture as part of our climate response in this country. So when we're thinking so much about stewardship and biodiversity, farmers are on the front line of that. So again, we need more resources to equip them. And this is one of the reasons we're opposing this farm bill, because if the guardrails are removed, we are not really investing in the next generation of farmers. We're not really investing in climate action. So we need to keep those guardrails in, so those programs go to the people that want to use them the most and cannot get to them. But this is a part that we haven't touched about. Those programs are so popular, they run out of money. So that's the reason we infuse them with Inflation Reduction Act. So we need to keep that money there too, and make sure they go to the best practices that young people and farmers all across the country want to use.
Thank you,
Couldn't have
Vanessa.
said it better myself. Yes.
Yeah, and as we think about going forward, really want to mention working with the Native Farm Bill Coalition. the University of Arkansas, our elder Janie Hip, who's on the Council of the USDA, really thinking about the indigenous practices and traditions as we think about the Farm Bill and creating relationships, building stronger relationship with tribes, tribal nations to be able to incorporate the amendments that need to happen. This is restorative justice. This is ancestral justice. I really appreciate everyone who has contributed, but also final words to our panelists, but also to know that Representative Pingree, your work is really critical as you are one of our elders and also our mothers that is leading the work, you know, that needs to be continued with the younger generation as well. And so as we learn from you, as we heard from you, but also accept what you have in your heart to our heart, thank you for all the work that you're doing. Now I'd just like to pass it over to Bilal to continue the conversation, and over to you to take it away.
Thank you so much, Denisa. And Denisa, I continue to be impressed by your moderating skills. I really appreciate you being here today for Slow Food USA. Always so good to see you, Vanessa, Marta, Marven, Cristina, thank you so much for being here. Representative Pingree, thank you so much for joining us today for Biodiversity Advocacy Day. So grateful. And I also want to take a moment to thank Brian Solem, our Director of Communications and Advocacy. He's the person who put all of this together for us. And as a reminder, Biodiversity Advocacy Day is focused on connecting our slow food activists with their legislators. And I'm going to take a moment to kind of walk you through how you can do that today. Follow the link in the chat that we'll post shortly. You can take action today in just a few minutes. And you have to remember that biodiversity is a critical cause for us, for slow food and for the globe. And a much needed change is long overdue in our nation's food system and food policies. Today, you can take action in just a few minutes, and that can help influence your elected officials and educate them about biodiversity. First, head to our Biodiversity Advocacy Day page at the link in the chat. Second, you can look up the phone numbers of your 2 US senators and your US representative. Then take the info you've just heard about the Farm Bill and mix it with your own experiences and perspectives and share it with your legislators on the phone. You can also use a simple phone script on the Biodiversity Advocacy Day page. And then finally, let us know you took action. You can write it in the chat now, or you can fill out this simple form on the Action Center page, and that will help us out a lot. And also, please take action on the Young Farmers campaign for their Farm Bill. Vanessa, I wanted to pass it off to you for a moment to tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, definitely. So we are opposing the bill right now, so asking all our Dems and hoping for some Republicans also to vote no. Because this Farm Bill does not work for young farmers, does not work because it doesn't prioritize land access and conservation programs. If they were to, they should not come to the expense of hungry people and families. So right now we are opposing this bill, and we share the link with you. But we really want to share with you about something that we have been really successful at Young Farmers, and is building relationships with members of Congress. For example, Representative Pingree, I only sent her thank you notes. I never had her. She is a champion. But we want to get to a point where we can see those that our members of Congress have, that we can say thank you to them. So this action, watch out for the voting record tomorrow. Watch out how your representative votes and say thank you, or say I'm really mad at you right now. Because we need to be building a relationship so they feel responsible and accountable to us. And right now, Young Farmers, through our 14-year history, we now have members of Congress that will actually cite the name of our farmers and their press releases of why they're voting no or why they're voting yes on pieces of legislation. So we want to get to a level that our elected members feel responsible to us, and they feel obliged to deliver the food system that we want and that we deserve, just as Representative Pingree is doing on behalf of her constituents.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for that. Before I went into the world of agriculture nonprofits, I was a farmer for 10 years. And my favorite experience was farming in Southwest Georgia at White Oak Pastures. And I worked on a ranch, and I was the one veggie farmer on that ranch with a small but very capable team. And I would not have been able to gain those experiences and provide food for the local community if not for a lot of USDA programs, even programs like the value added producer grants, which help you get supplies to create shelf stable products. Not only is that helping the farmer, it's then helping the farmer's team, the entire farm, and then you're actively providing and producing food for your community. And when you are creating food in ways that regenerate the land or return to indigenous practices, you're building up the soil, creating more health, which is then transferred to the plants, to the animals, and then to us. So all of these things are connected. And thank you so much for our panelists and our speakers today for really driving that point home. These laws, these bills, they have a deeply personal connection that will connect to our health as well. I wanted to take some time to throw some questions out there that have been popping up in the chat. And I would going to pick one question, and then I would love to allow our panelists to give a brief final remark. Let's see. And a question for Cristina and Marven. What changes are farmers making to agricultural practices to respond to our warming planet? First, Marven.
Okay. Down here, Congresswoman Pingree mentioned no-till practices and cover crops. That is something that we're seeing, that I'm seeing, I said we're, but that I'm seeing other small-scale specialty crop farmers doing because it's practical, right? A lot of our small-scale farmers don't have huge tractors. So to practice no-till, that eliminates some expenses for us, and it also helps us benefit biodiversity.
Yes, and I would agree with that. Also learning about the companion plants and testing soil to and improve it and through organic ways. There's a lot that small farmers are doing. Many are invisible because they grow in a patch of land here, borrowed neighbor there. Then there's not even a track ID number. We're trying to identify those, our communities in a GIS mapping system. But all these programs from the Farm Bill, until there needs to be funding for land access. If there is no funding for land access, I don't know, creating a land bank, I don't know. But if there's no funding for land access, all these funds from the Farm Bill program do not go to our frontline communities of color. They don't. They go to other farmers, mid-size, big ag. They don't come to us. So I'm happy to hear Marven taking advantage of some of the opportunities. It's an exception because we only have 1.4 Black farm operators in the entire country and 0.55% sales of Black farmers in the entire country. So we need farm land access. And in the state of Rhode Island, where I'm in, it's the most expensive farm land in the country. And there's no succession planning. And urban ag, I'm putting my advocacy hat now. I'll stop, but there needs to be funding to test the soils. That urban ag, is full of the industrial revolution chemicals and metals, and low-income communities of color are growing food that are getting their kids sick. And there's no funds for that. So we need to think of our communities, frontline communities of color, and that's where the Farm Bill needs to point at. Thank you.
Thank you, Cristina. And you kind of ushered us into kind of the final portion of our advocacy day today. Representative Pingree, are there any final remarks you'd like to leave us with? And then I'll pass it to Marta and then Vanessa.
Great. Well, I will just leave you with a thank you to everyone who's been participating in this, both the people on the panel, but everybody watching. And I know you're here to think about how to take action. And I mentioned earlier, let your member of Congress know that the most important climate change provisions that we have in agriculture right now are being stripped out of our practices with the current version of the Farm Bill that's going to be marked up in the House tomorrow. So we're opposing that. We're supportive of the version that's being done in the Senate. So it's a simple comparison. Senate version good, House version bad, until we get them together and put all those things together. But we have the capacity in this country to make sure we make all farmers our partners in things like biodiversity and soil sequestration. We have the capacity to make sure that the money goes to beginning farmers and disadvantaged farmers, and that we're supporting some of the issues people have talked about, keeping farmland in those places where land is getting expensive and hard to access. And we have this capacity to continue to support local foods and make sure people are buying more foods locally and supporting their farmers. All those provisions are in a good farm bill. All of them are things that I've been working on for years. So there's a lot of interest in it, and we can't let the money go to just the big farmers, just the commodities. That's the way that this version of the House Farm Bill is. It's all skewed to one side, to just continuing to support the way we've always done things. And we know better than that. We know how important this is at this moment in time. And I'm just excited that there are so many people who care about these things. So I'll thank you again for including me, and look forward to continuing to work with all of you. Contact my office or me anytime that you have more questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Marta, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, just as a few words, also in response to the House representative comment, we're also working hard here on the other side of the ocean to influence the Common Agricultural Policy, which is our own European version of the Farm Bill, but it's a very resourceful policy that unfortunately has been stripped down of lots of its environmental ambitions. So the discussions are coming up soon again. So it's so great if we can say, look, on the other side, they're managing to push through good measures. We need to keep up that same level. So yes, just my encouragement to the House representative to continue with the good work, and to everybody who attended, like Brian and Bilal have been inviting you, take action. Like biodiversity is really about all of us playing a role in this food system, whatever it is that we do in our daily life. And so, yes, please, in the measure that you can, anything you can really makes a difference. And as a global movement, that's how we like to say that we are the multitude that stands up to the giants. So join this multitude, let us be more multitude and really make a change, because we are the people. Like, we're not the big companies that are trying to ruin what's going on. So yes, take action, and thank you again so much.
Thank you, Marta, so much for being here. And Vanessa, any final remarks?
The moment is now. We are 20 hours out before markup, so please go take action. Taking action, because this is only round one. Feels like round three, actually, but we have a lot of work to do.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Thank you so much to the rest of our panelists for being here. Representative Pingree, thank you again. Thank you to our interpreter, Tapasio, for providing interpretation services during our Biodiversity Advocacy Day. Thank you, Brian, for all of your planning and all of your intention around this work. And most especially, thank you to Denisa for being our moderator today, for providing valuable insight. And also, thank you to our audience. Thank you for taking time out of your day to participate in this with us. Your advocacy is so important. It's one of the main pillars that Slow Food stands on. Biodiversity is all about understanding the relationships with each other and with our environment. For instance, pollinators. We need to get more of them out there, and we need to preserve them. And we need to work collectively. We need to embrace the diversity of cultures, the diversity of our thought, and also the diversity of local economies, because we will truly create and safeguard our future in these ways. And remember, the Farm Bill is only 90 years old. We have an opportunity to define the way that it works, and we have an opportunity to define the way that it works for us. We have to make sure that it's serving our communities, serving our land, and serving our climate. So take action. Remember that you are a change maker, And I'd like to direct all of you to slowfoodusa.org/slowfoodlive for our archive presentations, where you'll find a recording of today's Biodiversity Advocacy Day program. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for logging in today to join us.